Welcome back to the Dairy Knowledge Exchange. I'm Pat Colley, and I'm excited to share a fresh initiative we're launching in 2025 here at D&D Ingredients. Each month, we'll bring an educational webinar on this platform, spotlighting timely industry topics and featuring one of our valued partner products. Make sure to visit the D&D website regularly to explore these new learning opportunities.
So today I'd like to share with you some information about one of our best dairy products, Bovamine Dairy Plus. We say that it is the best of both worlds, and throughout the presentation today, I hope to make you a believer in that fact. To start, I'll do an overview of the two products that went into the making of Bovamine Dairy Plus. That is Bovamine Dairy, that is comprised of two different organisms, the Lactobacillus animalis and a Propionibacterium. I'm going to speak to you about Bovacillus Dairy, that has got two different bacillus organisms, and then focus most of the time on Bovamine Dairy Plus and its advantages. To start the story, I want to differentiate between what lactobacillus bacteria bring to the table and contrast that with what bacilli bring. Lactobacilli are non-motile colony-forming organisms. They're consumed, they populate the digestive system, they'll find attachment points within the digestive tract, let's say in the intestines. They will spread out like carpets. They are very good at converting sugars to acids, reducing the pH in the environment. If I think euphemistically, I can say that lactobacilli want to be in the host. We keep them warm, well fed, we carry them from place to place. And of course, when they leave our digestive system, we deposit them in a relatively nutrient rich environment. If you look at what lactobacilli do very well within their host, is they interact with the host tissues. They support the barrier function, keeping things that are moving through our intestines from leaving that environment and coming into our bodies. They maintain tight junctions, the production of mucins and mucus, and also are involved in competitive exclusion by simply binding to the microvilli, preventing other organisms from doing that. We've got great evidence that lactobacilli also support immune functions, including the secretion of cytokines, those cell-to-cell signaling molecules, and also peptide production. And of course, when you can increase acidity, reduce pH, it does offer some modicum of reduction in potential pathogens because gram-negative bacteria don't really prefer an acid-rich environment. In contrast, bacilli are motile hunter-killers. These organisms evolved in dirt. They are very good at finding some food source, at taking advantage of that. They can move. They're very good at enriching the environment for themselves and creating a deleterious environment for others. They interact by forming biofilms. They send out quorum sensing molecule, those pheromonal type signals to call to other bacilli of the same type. They form very mature biofilms, and in that environment, they can produce very high concentrations of digestive enzymes, very high concentrations of potentially antimicrobial peptides that keep the potentially harmful organisms at bay. What's best about these two types of organisms is that they play very well together. Typically, when you feed bacilli, you see an increase in lactobacilli. They don't play in the same bioniche, and they work extremely well together. So, with that as background, let's talk about Bovamine Dairy Plus. It is introduced into the marketplace a few decades ago, 2003. The strains in the organisms in this product contain bacilli that have been in the marketplace since the 1990s. And in 2019, we put those together to make Bovamine Dairy Plus. When you look at why this probiotic is good, it contains LA51, a lactobacillus organism, Propionibacterium PF24. We have fed these organisms in beef cattle and in dairy cattle. We have over 40 research trials looking at their efficacy, including a couple dozen in peer-reviewed journals. When you look at the bacillus organisms, we look at CH200 and CH201. These are not only in cows and calves, but we use those organisms in our swine and poultry products. We have hundreds of research trials looking at their efficacy and hundreds of peer-reviewed articles and abstracts. They are currently among our best strains of organism. And just to step back, a strain of organism is an individual with its unique genetic gifts and all of its trillions upon trillions of nearly identical clonal copies. We prefer to talk about strain rather than just the genus and species because in our world, it is strain that matters most. If I step back and now look at the individual probiotics that go into the making of Bovamine Dairy Plus, I'll start with some research trials on bovamine dairy, share with you some of those results. You can see these trials were done at universities. We believe in a full transparency. Some trials worked very well, where I got up to 5.5% difference in energy-corrected milk production. Other trials looking very early in lactation did not see a significant result. But you can see all 7 of the trials and the average change in the production of energy-corrected milk. Moving on, there are 7 trials that were done, also looking at bovamine dairy in the field, 1 in Sweden, 2 in Brazil, 2 in Spain, and 1 each in the Netherlands and the US. The key findings supported an improvement in the efficiency of milk production, supported proper ruminal pH, supported a positive change in digestibility of key nutrients, and of course, the utilization of those nutrients, including an increase in IGF-1 and nitrogen utilization. Looking at the overall results of all of those trials, I appreciate the overwhelming nature of all of those data, but it's simply wanting to point out we measured a great many things, and when the word is greater, that is statistically significantly different. You can see that in many studies, we found an improvement in yield and efficiency, and including such things as lactose and total solids. Bottom line is these studies were beautiful evidence in the field that this probiotic supported the normal health and expected function in cattle. Looking at the meta-analysis across all of the trials and all of the variables, you can see the raft of information provided, looking everything from dry matter intake to milk production on a kilogram per head per day. You can see the average difference between the treated and untreated groups, the standard error of that difference, and the probability that that difference was significant. Key, of course, among this was energy-corrected milk production was statistically highly significant. The yield of protein was also significant, and the MUN actually decreased significantly. If I show you this meta-analysis simply as a bar chart, again, with the idea that we want full transparency, I would love to say that every time we've looked at it, we got a significantly positive difference, but that would be a false statement. But here for milk yield, kilogram per head per day, you can see the results from the individual studies and then the meta-analysis showing that when you use this product, you would expect on average about a 3/4 kilogram per head per day improvement, plus or minus half a kilogram. And that's what a meta-analysis would yield from the results of those 8 trials. Looking at efficiency of milk production, kilogram per kilogram, that would be feed and milk. Again, open kimono, you can see all the results from the individual trials, including one where not so good, but on average, you would expect a significant improvement in the efficiency of milk production in terms of feed utilization producing milk. If I look at energy corrected milk yield, in this case, kilograms per head per day, again, all the trials where I see a significant result, about 0.8 kilograms of energy corrected milk yield per head per day. Switching now to trials done with Bovamine Dairy Plus. We introduced this product in 2019. We were very eager to begin looking before release of this product at potential efficacy. We approached 14 different dairies in Idaho, California, and Washington. These dairies contain both Jersey and Holstein cows, about 110,000 cows across these 14 dairies. We were very interested in looking at apparent digestibility, NDF starch, and crude protein, and also in hygiene, looking at TMR and fecal hygiene for assessment. The way we did this was to take fecal and TMR samples before the beginning of the trial feeding our probiotic at day -7 and day -1, and then almost weekly for 90 days, we looked at those same samples. The way we did this was to take 10 CMR samples at a time, combine them and mix that, and then do that twice per day for each of the sample days. We collected 25 to 30 fecal samples, combined them, again, looked at that twice a day per sampling day. From each of those samples, 3 subsamples were analyzed at Rock River Labs to look at the change in apparent digestibility and hygiene. That was a total of about 2,700 samples run for this trial. So I consider that to be pretty reasonable pre-work prior to launch. Here is the results for hygiene across the 90 days for the trial. If you look at Clostridium perfringens, we see an increase in the TMR over time, yet there was a decrease in that organism being shed in the manure. So when you think about antimicrobial peptides and the action of probiotic organisms, even though the change in TMR was deleterious, you had an increase in Clostridium in the manure, there was a steady decrease over time. If we look at NDF apparent digestibility, I look across the 90 days. This is the difference, the percent pre-trial, comparing the observations across the 90 days on an effective probiotic compared to day -7 and day -1. And you can see there was a steady increase on average in NDF digestibility. And most interestingly, if we look at the coefficient of variation over time, the results show a decrease in variation. And every time you can increase digestibility and reduce variation, that's a win. If we look at starch, apparent digestibility, same phenomenon, a steady increase over time, a reduction in variation. Looking at crude protein digestibility, again, a very modest but slight increase over time and a decrease in variation. So we consider that quite a reasonable opportunity to bring this new product to the market. The last we did a bioassay. We took 30-day-old calves. These were colostrum deprived. Our goal was to look at the efficacy of this in calves as a potential opportunity to reduce the impact of Clostridium perfringens. The way this was run, these calves were put into three different treatment groups: a control, a bovamine dairy, and a bovamine dairy plus group. They were housed individually with no nose to nose contact. Beginning at day zero, these animals were provided a high dose of Clostridium perfringens, and we observed them for the next 14 days, 21 days, pardon me. So I have 7 days of observation prior to the challenge and 21 days of observation after the challenge. We measured three things: a general impression score, an appearance score, and a diarrhea score. If the general impression appearance was normal, then the animal on that day got a score of 0. For any abnormality, depending upon the severity, the calves on that day were given a score of 1 to 4. I'm really not interested in abnormalities. I'm much more interested in the way that these probiotics supported normal. So you're looking at the percentage of normal days across the 28 days of observation. So if you think about it, for 7 days prior to the start, the animals would be expected to be normal. So in theory, our baseline should be roughly 25%. In the group receiving no effective probiotics across the 28 days of observation, we saw only 43% on average normal. The same would be true for appearance and for diarrhea. In each of the probiotic groups, the percentage of days by calves that were normal approached or exceeded 80%, except in the case of diarrhea where it approached 80%. Perhaps the most compelling variable in this bioassay was survival. Of the 30 calves, we lost 8 during the course of the trial. This was a fairly challenging dose of Clostridium. In the control group, 6 of the 10 animals perished over the course of the study. In the first probiotic group, Bovamine dairy, we only lost 2 of the animals. But in the Bovamine dairy plus, a probiotic containing bacilli and lactobacilli and propionibacteria, we did not lose a single calf. And if you look numerically, they were the healthiest group over that period of time. So clearly a potential opportunity adding a bacillus organism group to a lactobacillus. Switching now, I'm going to talk about the reason we originally looked at Bovacillus to consider for including in our Bovacillus and our Bovamine dairy to make Bovamine dairy plus, and that was its capacity to produce enzymes. Let me just remind you that Bacillus subtilis organisms and Bacillus licheniformis organisms are exquisitely good at producing digestive enzymes. That's what makes them so successful in the world. It depending upon which type of food moiety they find, they're able to alter their secretion of enzymes. If they find starch, they secrete amylolytic enzymes. If they find fat, lipolytic, proteins, proteolytic, and fiber, cellulolytic. So they're very good at producing digestive enzymes. To test this, we took our Bovacillus product that contains CH200, and CH201, and we looked at starch digestibility by different feed substrate and found statistically significant improvements in starch digestibility. This was an abstract, so we can consider it published data. Looking at different forages, we looked at 10 different sources from ryegrass to Flinders grass, and in 8 out of 10 samples taken, we saw a significant increase in NDF digestibility when Bovacillus was used in the assay. So now the best of both worlds. Bovamine Dairy Plus, I'm going to share with you the product overview and then talk about its capacity to support normal and give you a couple examples. Bovamine Dairy Plus is four strains combined, our LA51, PF24, CH201, and CH200 organisms. When you use this product on a per day basis, you're providing about 13 billion colony forming units. We introduced this in 2019. It's been on the market for about 7 years now, designed for lactating cows, dry cows, and calves. It's ideal for all bovine animals. What it does, it simply supports normal functioning of the gut for digestion to make sure you get nutrients out of feed. It supports absorption of those nutrients across a healthy digestive surface. And of course, the more nutrients digested and absorbed based on the resource allocation model of life, animals will apportion those nutrients to maintenance, to defense, or for the production of milk. These organisms support the barrier function, keeping things moving through the intestines out of the body, and immune function. The bottom line is use of this effective probiotics leads to a greater percentage of normal, healthy animals in your herd. We have an axiom: the greater the percentage of normal, healthy animals, the greater the likelihood of a positive outcome. So to share with you some data that may be in your home court type, if you will, for producers, this is observational data from a 1,400 cow dairy. This dairy is the Union Go Dairy, owned by Tony and Yvonne Goldstein. I have their permission to use these data. It's a 15-year study looking at the efficacy of probiotics. On this dairy, the major pain point was health problems in those cows during the first 9 weeks postpartum. So early in milk, they would have problems where the animals could die, they would need to be culled, they would have a displaced abomasum, a retained placenta, or some miscellaneous illness. The hundreds of dots you're looking at on this page represent the weekly results for animals in early lactation that had some health problem. 15 years ago, and for 2 years, they were being observed with no effective probiotic. During that time, they averaged about 9.8% adverse health events during the first 9 weeks of milk. About 13 years ago, they went on Bovamine Dairy. They saw a significant drop. About 5 years ago, they went on Bovamine Dairy Plus. That improved again. But rather than talking about adverse health events, I'd much prefer to show these data as percentage of normal cows during the first 9 weeks of lactation. And your eye will tell you, and our statistics will prove, that there was a significant increase in the percentage of normal animals. And for us, a better way to show this is to use the statistical tool and to draw the bell curves of these data over time. So go back to about 12 years ago. We looked at those data and we saw that for the percent of normal animals, it was 90 plus or minus 5%. The Goldsteins made a choice to go on an effective probiotic, and over the course of the next 8 years, they went up to 94%, but probably as importantly, the variation week to week went from 5% down to 2.8%. About 5 years ago, they went on our best product, and now they've been running at about 95 plus or minus 2%, even through the last months of observation. So clearly, the weeks they have disasters are nearly gone. They have seen a significant improvement in the head per day milk production, and they're having less and less adverse health events, which probably means lower vet bills, etc. So clearly an advantage. We also did 8 trials, 2 of them research trials, well controlled, 2 of them field observations on calves. These are pre-wean calves, looking at the key variables of average daily gain, feed intake, and then health, looking at diarrhea and pneumonia. Here are the results or the setup of those trials. It shows you all of them, the number of calves in the treatment from 6 to 32, whether they were male, female, or mixed. It provides you the feeding rate and also looking at the results in terms of when they were provided the supplement in their milk replacer or in whole milk. Looking at the meta-analysis on pre-weaned calves, you can see that these are the results, and clearly there was a highly significant improvement in average daily gain. If I look at the study now, the observational studies, again looking at 90 newborn Guernsey Cross Holstein calves across 3 different treatments. I'll simply cut to the chase. This is the standard way they would be fed, increasing amount of feed per day post weaning. And you look at the body weight, the weaning weight was highly significantly improved by the probiotic. Turning now to the results by bar chart, for those of you who prefer chart over prose, if I look at the weight gain, it was highly significantly better. The average daily gain was tendency to be improved, as was the gain per feed. If I look at the occurrence of diarrhea, it was almost cut in half. The occurrence of pneumonia was cut in half. And if I look at the final 2 slides, this is the effect of supplementation on diarrhea over time. This is the cumulative incidence. You can see it went up faster in the control group and was higher over time. And if I look at the pneumonia, it went up faster and remained higher cumulatively over time. So with that, I will stop. I'm happy to share this deck of slides and to answer any and all questions. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Dairy Knowledge Exchange. Don't forget to check our product page for featured products and promotions throughout the year. Connect with us on LinkedIn or share your thoughts and topic suggestions directly with me at pat@ddingredient.com. We look forward to hearing from you.